In-depth review of the discussion on the Cincinnati Bengals roster strategy. The discussion centers around the Cincinnati Bengals strategy regarding their key players, T. Higgins, Ja'Marr Chase, and Trey Hendrickson, amid financial constraints and broader team-building concerns. The debate revolves around whether the Bengals should retain all three stars, the franchise's historical spending habits, and the impact of such decisions on Joe Burrow's championship window. Franchise tag on T. Higgins, a short-term fix or a strategic misstep. The Bengals' decision to place the franchise tag on T. Higgins signals an effort to maintain control over his future, providing the team until July 15th to negotiate a long-term deal. However, franchise tagging is often a temporary solution and, in this case, could be a precursor to a tag-and-trade scenario. Several analysts agree that the Bengals' reluctance to commit to Higgins long-term is justified due to the financial burden of also extending Ja'Marr Chase. Chase, widely regarded as a top-3 wide receiver in the NFL, is expected to reset the wide receiver market with a deal comparable to or exceeding Justin Jefferson's contract. Paying two receivers at the top of the market would be a rare financial commitment, and history suggests that the Bengals are unlikely to take that route. The Bengals' spending philosophy, a barrier to sustained success? One of the most striking points raised in the discussion is the Bengals' historical approach to spending. Unlike AFC contenders, such as the Kansas City Chiefs, Baltimore Ravens, and Buffalo Bills, who aggressively allocate resources to retain and acquire top-tier talent, the Bengals have consistently been conservative in their spending. This philosophy was evident when they allowed safety Jesse Bates to walk in free agency, only for him to become an immediate Pro Bowler with the Atlanta Falcons. A similar argument is made regarding running back Joe Mixon, whose departure in 2023 weakened the offense. These decisions suggest that the Bengals prioritize financial flexibility over aggressive roster building, a stance that may limit their championship potential despite possessing an elite quarterback in Joe Burrow. Kevin Clark highlights this issue with a compelling analogy, comparing the Bengals to the Dallas Cowboys, a team notorious for delaying key extensions and ultimately paying a higher price later. He contrasts this with the Philadelphia Eagles, who proactively extend their stars early to avoid skyrocketing market prices. This reactive rather than proactive approach could prove costly for Cincinnati. Joe Burrow's window, wasting a generational talent? Burrow himself has declared that the Bengals' championship window remains open as long as he is under center. However, some analysts argue that push all their chips in. The comparison to the early years of Matthew Stafford's career in Detroit is particularly poignant. Stafford put up impressive individual numbers, but the team around him was never strong enough to compete for a Super Bowl. There is a legitimate concern that Burrow could face a similar fate if the Bengals do not adopt a more aggressive approach to team building. Trey Hendrickson, a defensive cornerstone or a cap casualty. Hendrickson, the Bengals' premier pass rusher, is another key figure in this conversation. While receivers Higgins and Chase are essential to the offense, Hendrickson is arguably just as important to the defense. The discussion raises the question of whether Cincinnati can afford to let him go, especially given the premium value placed on elite pass rushers in today's NFL. One argument against retaining all three players is that investing too much money in the wide receiver position may not be the best way to build a Super Bowl contender. The Chiefs, for instance, won the 2023 Super Bowl with a relatively modest group of receivers, prioritizing offensive line strength and a dominant defense instead. Tim Hasselbeck emphasizes that championship teams often build from the inside out, focusing on the trenches before allocating major funds to skill positions, ownership, and the need for modernization. Mike Brown, the Bengals owner, has long been criticized for his reluctance to adapt to the evolving financial landscape of the NFL. The franchise's lack of guaranteed money in contracts and its conservative spending approach stand in stark contrast to teams like the Eagles, who strategically structure deals to keep their Super Bowl window open. As the league continues to evolve, the Bengals must decide whether they will adjust their philosophy or risk losing the very players who make them a contender. If they fail to act decisively, they may squander a golden opportunity to build a dynasty around Joe Burrow. Conclusion: a crossroads for Cincinnati. The Bengals are at a pivotal moment in their franchise's trajectory. If they commit to retaining all three stars, they must make difficult financial decisions elsewhere. If they let one or more leave, they risk weakening their roster in a hyper-competitive AFC. The debate encapsulates the core dilemma facing Cincinnati: whether to prioritize financial prudence or take bold risks to capitalize on Burrow's championship window. Ultimately, the discussion underscores the urgency for the Bengals to modernize their approach. Whether they follow through on long-term deals for Higgins, Chase, and Hendrickson, or repeat past mistakes, will determine their ability to compete for Super Bowls in the years to come.